So, this happened 3 weeks ago, and I'm still processing the absolute cruelty of what my family did to my son, Deacon. I need to get this out because what I'm planning for their anniversary party next week is going to change everything permanently. Quick background. I'm 34. Been the family disappointment since I was born, apparently. My parents, Lawson and Shirley, always made it clear I wasn't the golden child. That honor went to my sister Michaela and brother Ellis. When I moved across the country 5 years ago after my divorce and took my son with me, they acted like I was kidnapping their grandson, even though my ex-wife Lauren had zero interest in custody. The thing is, I've spent these 5 years building something. I own 3 rental properties now, started a consulting business that's doing really well, and I've been documenting every single cruel thing my family has said or done since I left. Not because I'm some victim collecting evidence, because I knew this day would come eventually, and I wanted to be ready. Deacon's 7th birthday was coming up and he was so excited because he thought his grandparents and aunt and uncle might actually remember this year. The kid still talks about them like they're these wonderful people who just live far away. I never told him the truth about why we really moved. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning and Deacon ran to get it when he saw his name on the label. I was making coffee and I heard him go quiet in the living room. When I walked over, he was just standing there holding this moldy piece of bread, staring at it like he couldn't understand what he was seeing. Inside the box was a loaf of bread that was completely green with mold, 3 rocks from someone's driveway, and a pair of socks that had holes cut deliberately through them, not worn through. Cut. You could see the scissors marks. At the bottom was a folded piece of paper. The note said, "Happy birthday to the kid nobody wanted from the family who wishes you were never born. P.S. Your dad's a failure, and you'll probably be one, too." Deacon looked up at me and asked why Grandma Shirley would send him garbage for his birthday. He wanted to know if he did something wrong. This 7-year-old kid thought he had done something to deserve this. I took the box, told him we'd make his birthday amazing ourselves, and we did. But that night after he went to bed, I sat in my office and opened the folder I've been keeping for 5 years. Every email, every text, every cruel comment they've made about me stealing their grandson or how I'll never amount to anything. See, here's what my family doesn't know. When I moved out here, it wasn't just to get away from them. I moved to the same town where Lawson's brother used to live before he died. The brother who owned the hardware store that's been in our family for 3 generations. The store that Lawson always bragged about inheriting someday. Turns out, Uncle Lane left some debts when he died that the family never knew about. Debts that got transferred to some very patient creditors who were willing to wait for the right buyer to come along. Someone who understood the family dynamics and was motivated to collect in a very specific way. I've been working with these creditors for 2 years now. Everything's been legal. Everything's been documented. And everything's been leading up to their big 40th anniversary party next Saturday. The party they've been planning for 8 months. The party where they invited everyone except me and Deacon. The party where they're expecting to announce some big family news about their future plans. My sister Michaela called me yesterday to tell me I wasn't welcome at the anniversary celebration, but that I should send a nice gift anyway because it's what family does. She said they didn't want my negative energy ruining their parents' special day. When I asked her about the birthday package, she just laughed and said, "Deacon needs to learn early that life isn't going to hand him anything just because he exists." That's when I knew it was time to execute the plan I've been building for 5 years. The thing about revenge is that it works best when the people who hurt you have something precious to lose, something they've been counting on, something that defines their entire sense of self-worth and security. Lawson and Shirley have been telling everyone in their social circle about this anniversary party for months, about how successful their family is, how proud they are of their legacy, how they're going to announce their retirement plans, and the big inheritance they're leaving to their worthy children. What they don't know is that their financial situation changed dramatically about 6 months ago when certain property liens were quietly transferred to a new owner. Someone who's been very patient about collecting, but who's finally ready to call in those debts. The party is this Saturday. I've already booked my flight home. They wanted to teach my son that he's unwanted and that his father is a failure. They're about to learn what actual failure looks like when everything they've built comes crashing down in front of everyone they've ever tried to impress. The best part is that they'll know exactly who's responsible and exactly why it's happening, but by then it'll be way too late to stop it. Update coming after the party. This is going to be good. Update 1. Well, the dominoes are starting to fall and it's even better than I planned. I'm sitting in my hotel room right now about 20 minutes from my parents' house and the chaos has already begun. I flew in yesterday morning and immediately went to handle the final paperwork. Everything I've been setting up for 2 years got finalized with one signature. The property liens, the debt transfers, the foreclosure notices, all of it became active as of 9 a.m. yesterday. By noon, Lawson got the certified mail at his office. By 2 p.m., Shirley was calling everyone in the family trying to figure out what was happening. By 5 p.m., my sister Michaela was blowing up my phone with messages asking if I knew anything about some company claiming they owned debts related to Uncle Lane's hardware store. I didn't answer. I was busy meeting with the catering company that my parents hired for tomorrow's party. See, when you're dealing with a family that values appearances above everything else, you attack the thing that matters most to them, how they look to other people. The anniversary party isn't just a celebration for them. It's their chance to show off to their entire social circle. It's where they plan to announce that Ellis was taking over the family business and that Michaela was getting the house when they retire. What they don't realize yet is that there is no family business anymore. And there's not going to be a house to inherit. The hardware store that's been in our family for 3 generations, the one that Uncle Lane left to Lawson in his will. Turns out Uncle Lane had been borrowing against the property for years before he died. The debt got sold to a collection company, then sold again, then sold one more time to a very motivated buyer who was willing to pay premium prices for the chance to collect personally. The debt was called in yesterday. Total amount owed $847,000. That's more than the current value of the store and the property combined. But here's where it gets really interesting. When Lawson inherited the store, he also inherited all of Uncle Lane's business debts. What he didn't know is that Uncle Lane had personally guaranteed those debts using the family house as collateral. The house that Lawson and Shirley have been living in for 15 years, thinking they owned it free and clear. They don't. This morning, Shirley got the foreclosure notice. They have 30 days to pay the full amount or the house goes to auction. Ellis called me around lunchtime screaming about how I needed to fix this because obviously I was behind it somehow. He said the family was going to lose everything and it was all my fault for being vindictive over some stupid birthday present. When I told him I had no idea what he was talking about, he hung up on me. 20 minutes later, Michaela called. She was crying and begging me to help them figure out who was doing this to the family. She said they were going to have to cancel the anniversary party because they couldn't afford it anymore and they needed to focus on saving the house. That's when I told her that cancelling the party would be a mistake, that running away from their problems wasn't going to solve anything, that they should go ahead with their celebration and face their community with dignity. She actually thanked me for the advice. What she doesn't know is that I spent this afternoon making sure the party goes exactly as planned. The caterers will be there. The band will be there. All 53 guests that my parents invited will show up expecting to celebrate 40 years of marriage and hear the big announcement about the family's bright future. Instead, they're going to witness the complete destruction of everything Lawson and Shirley have spent their lives building. The foreclosure papers will be served tomorrow at 2 p.m. right in the middle of the party in front of everyone they've ever tried to impress. But that's not even the best part. See, I've been thinking about what my parents said about Deacon, about how he's unwanted and how I'm a failure. Who's just going to raise another failure about how our family wishes he was never born. They want to know what failure really looks like. Tomorrow they're going to find out that their successful son Ellis has been stealing from the hardware store for 3 years to pay his gambling debts. They're going to learn that their perfect daughter Michaela has been having an affair with Lawson's business partner and that her husband is filing for divorce next week. And they're going to discover that their failure son, the one they wrote off years ago, is the person who owns all their debts and holds the power to destroy everything they've ever worked for. The party starts at 1 p.m. tomorrow. I'll be there right on time. Next update will be after the fireworks. Update 2. I don't even know where to start with what happened at that party. It was absolutely brutal, and I'm still processing everything that went down. I showed up at exactly 1 p.m. wearing my best suit and carrying a beautifully wrapped gift box. The look on my parents' faces when they saw me walk into their backyard was priceless. Confusion, panic, and that fake smile they do when they're trying to maintain appearances in front of their friends. Shirley came rushing over and asked what I was doing there. I told her that Michaela had convinced me that family should stick together during difficult times and that I wanted to celebrate their anniversary properly. The relief on her face was almost sad. She actually thought I was there to help them somehow. For the first hour, everything was normal. People were eating, drinking, talking about old times. My parents were working the crowd, accepting congratulations, trying to act like everything was fine, but I could see the stress in their faces. They kept checking their phones and whispering to each other. Ellis and Michaela were both there with their families, also trying to act normal, but clearly freaking out about the financial situation. Every time someone asked them about taking over the family business, they'd get this panicked look and change the subject. At 2 p.m. exactly, the sheriff's deputy showed up. The entire party went quiet as this guy in uniform walked through the backyard asking for Lawson and Shirley. My parents went white as sheets. Some of the guests started murmuring, asking each other if someone had called the police. The deputy handed them the foreclosure papers right there in front of everyone. Lawson tried to pull him aside, but the deputy said he needed verbal confirmation that the papers had been received and understood. So, he read out the basics. The property was in default. They had 30 days to vacate. The debt was being called in full. The silence was deafening. 53 people standing there watching my parents get served with papers at their own anniversary party. But here's where it gets really good. Shirley turned to Ellis and started demanding that he explain what was happening. She said he was supposed to be handling the business finances and that this must be some kind of mistake. Ellis got defensive and said he'd been doing everything right, that this was about old debts from Uncle Lane. That's when Michaela jumped in and said Ellis had been acting weird about money for months and maybe he should tell everyone what was really going on with the store's accounts. Ellis lost it. He started screaming at Michaela about how she should worry about her own problems and maybe tell her husband why she's been working so many late nights lately. Michaela's husband, Lane, was standing right there. His face went through about 6 different emotions before he grabbed Michaela's arm and demanded to know what Ellis was talking about. The whole party turned into this massive family explosion with everyone yelling at each other while their friends just stood there watching. People started pulling out their phones to record it. Someone was definitely live streaming because I saw at least 3 people holding up their phones at different angles. That's when I decided it was time for my big moment. I walked over to where my parents were standing and handed them my gift box. I told them I had something special for their anniversary, something that would help them understand exactly where their family stood. Inside the box were copies of all the debt documents, the foreclosure papers, the transfer agreements, and a letter explaining exactly how I'd acquired their obligations. At the bottom was a printed copy of the cruel note they'd sent to Deacon for his birthday. Lawson read through everything while Shirley looked over his shoulder. I watched their faces as they realized what had happened, how long I'd been planning this, how completely I'd outmaneuvered them. When Lawson looked up at me, I told him that he'd spent years telling me I was a failure who would never amount to anything. That I was stealing his grandson away from the family. That Deacon was unwanted and would probably turn out just like his worthless father. I said that he was right about one thing. Deacon was going to turn out just like me. Smart enough to plan ahead, strong enough to protect himself and successful enough to destroy anyone who tried to hurt him. Then I told him that I now owned everything he'd ever worked for and that I was calling in every debt immediately. The store, the house, all of it gone. The party completely fell apart after that. People started leaving in groups. All of them talking about what they just witnessed. Ellis and Michaela were still screaming at each other about their respective secrets. Lane was demanding answers from his wife. Shirley was crying and asking how I could do this to family. I stayed until almost everyone had left, just long enough to make sure they understood that this wasn't some impulsive decision. This was 5 years of careful planning coming together exactly as intended. As I was walking to my car, Lawson followed me. He said that I'd won, that I destroyed their family, and that I should be proud of myself for ruining so many lives over a stupid prank. I turned around and told him that it wasn't a prank when you send a 7-year-old moldy bread and tell him his family wishes he was never born. That was cruelty. What I did was just business. But the real drama started after I handed them the box. Lawson tried to pull me aside and started this whole speech about how we could work this out as a family. He said he understood I was angry about the birthday package, but that destroying everyone's lives wasn't going to solve anything. He kept saying that Deacon needed his grandparents and that I was hurting my own son by taking away his family. I let him finish his whole guilt trip before I responded. I told him that he was absolutely right. Deacon did need family. He needed family who would love him unconditionally, support him when he was struggling, and celebrate his milestones with joy instead of cruelty. Unfortunately, he didn't have that kind of family on their side. That's when Shirley joined the conversation, and things got really heated. She started crying and saying that the birthday package was just their way of trying to teach Deacon some life lessons. That kids today get everything handed to them and don't learn the value of hard work. She said they thought some tough love might motivate him to appreciate what he had. I stared at her for a full 10 seconds before I responded. I asked her to explain exactly what life lesson my 7-year-old son was supposed to learn from receiving moldy bread and a note telling him his family wished he was never born. What valuable character building was supposed to happen when a child opens a package expecting love and instead finds deliberate cruelty? Ellis had wandered over during this conversation and jumped in to defend their parents. He said I was being dramatic and that one bad gift wasn't worth destroying the whole family over. He kept insisting that I was overreacting and that this whole situation was proof that I was just as unstable as Lauren used to claim during the divorce. That's when I lost it. I told Ellis that he wanted to talk about being unstable. Let's talk about his gambling problem that nobody in the family knew about. Let's discuss how he'd been stealing money from the hardware store for months to pay off his debts. I asked him if he thought that was stable behavior from someone who was supposed to inherit the family business. The look on his face was perfect. Pure panic mixed with rage. He started sputtering about how I couldn't possibly know about any of that and demanding to know where I was getting my information. I told him that when you're planning to destroy someone's life, you do your research. I'd spent 2 years documenting every aspect of their financial situations, their personal relationships, their business dealings. I knew things about all of them that they didn't even know about each other. Michaela had been trying to stay out of the confrontation, but Ellis dragged her into it by demanding that she back him up about how unreasonable I was being. That's when I decided to share what I knew about her situation, too. I asked Michaela how her husband Lane was going to react when he found out about her affair with Ruby, Lawson's business partner. I mentioned that I had documentation of their meetings, their text conversations, even photos of them together at the hotel downtown. The color drained from her face. She started stammering about how I didn't understand the situation and that her marriage had been struggling for years anyway. She said that what happened between her and Ruby wasn't anyone else's business and that I had no right to interfere in her personal life. I told her she was absolutely right. It wasn't my business, just like my son's birthday wasn't their business when they decided to send him garbage and cruel notes. But once you make the choice to hurt someone's family, you forfeit the right to privacy and respect for your own. By this point, Lane had figured out what we were discussing and came storming over, demanding explanations. The whole thing turned into this massive screaming match with everyone accusing everyone else of lies and betrayal. Meanwhile, their anniversary guests were still standing around watching this complete meltdown unfold. Several people tried to leave, but I had positioned myself near the gate and kept engaging different groups in conversation about how terrible it must be to discover family secrets this way. I mentioned how shocking it was to learn about Ellis's financial problems and Michaela's affair all at the same time. Really made sure everyone got the full story before they left. The party didn't officially end until almost 6 p.m. 3 hours after the foreclosure papers were served. By the time the last guest left, the whole family was in complete chaos. Lane was demanding that Michaela choose between him and Ruby. Ellis was trying to convince everyone that his gambling wasn't that serious. Lawson and Shirley were calling lawyers trying to figure out if there was any way to stop the foreclosure. As I was finally leaving, Shirley grabbed my arm and begged me to tell her what it would take to make this stop. She said they would do anything, apologize publicly, pay for therapy for Deacon, whatever I wanted. She just needed me to tell her how to fix this. I looked her straight in the eye and told her that there was nothing she could do. That this wasn't about money or apologies. This was about consequences. When you decide to emotionally abuse a child, there are going to be consequences. When you spend years treating your own son like garbage, there are going to be consequences. And when you mess with someone's family, you better be prepared for them to mess with yours. The final phase starts tomorrow. They think losing the house and store is the worst of it. They have no idea what's coming next. Final update. It's been a week since the anniversary party, and my family's entire world has completely collapsed. I'm back home now, but I wanted to give you all the final update on how this all played out because the last few days have been absolutely insane. The day after the party, Ellis showed up at my hotel demanding to talk. He looked like he hadn't slept and he was clearly desperate. He said the family was willing to work out some kind of payment plan that they could figure out a way to keep the house if I was willing to be reasonable. I told him there was nothing to discuss. The debts were due in full and I had no interest in payment plans. He started getting angry, saying I was destroying innocent people just to get back at our parents. That Michaela's kids were going to lose their home, too, since she and Lane were getting divorced and she'd been planning to move back in with Mom and Dad. That's when I told him about the second phase of my plan. See, while I was acquiring all of Uncle Lane's business debts, I also did some digging into Ellis's personal finances. Turns out my brother has been living way beyond his means for years. The gambling problem Michaela mentioned, it's much worse than anyone in the family knew. Ellis has been taking money from the hardware store's accounts to cover his losses. Small amounts at first, but it escalated over the past year. He owes money to some very serious people, and he's been using the store as his personal ATM to keep them happy. The total amount he's stolen, $127,000. I had all the documentation, bank records, transaction histories, everything. And on Tuesday morning, I delivered it all to the local police department along with a detailed complaint about theft and embezzlement. Ellis went white when I told him this. He started begging me not to file charges, saying he could pay it all back if I just gave him time. He promised he'd get help for his gambling, that he'd do whatever it took to make things right. I let him finish his whole desperate plea before I told him it was too late. The police report had already been filed Monday night. They'd probably be coming to arrest him within the next day or two. But that wasn't even the best part. While Ellis was dealing with his impending arrest, I was busy implementing the final piece of my revenge. Remember how I mentioned that Michaela was having an affair with Ruby, Lawson's business partner? Well, that business partner happens to be the co-owner of the company that Lawson works for. I had spent months documenting Michaela's affair, including her meetings with Ruby during business hours, their text exchanges about insider information, and evidence that she'd been sharing details about company contracts with Lane's construction business so they could underbid on projects. Tuesday afternoon, I had a very productive meeting with the company's HR department and the other business partners. I provided them with comprehensive documentation about the affair and how it was creating conflicts of interest that were affecting their business decisions. Lawson got fired Wednesday morning after 22 years with the company. He was walked out the same day for failing to disclose his daughter's relationship with his business partner and for enabling what amounted to industrial espionage. But I wasn't done yet. Wednesday afternoon, I received a very interesting phone call. Turns out that when you file detailed financial complaints about someone's gambling debts and theft, other creditors start paying attention. Ellis's gambling debts weren't just with the people he'd been paying off through the store. He owed money to several other sources that had been patiently waiting for their turn to collect. Once word got out about his theft and the fact that he was about to be arrested, every single creditor decided to call in their debts immediately. The total amount Ellis owes, just over $340,000. His house went into foreclosure Thursday morning. By Friday, the whole family was in complete freefall, no income, facing multiple foreclosures, dealing with Ellis's criminal charges and trying to manage Michaela's divorce while her affair became public knowledge throughout their entire social circle. That's when Shirley called me. She was crying and begging me to stop destroying the family. She said they understood they'd made mistakes, but that what I was doing was going too far. She offered to do anything. Apologize publicly, pay back money they didn't have, whatever it would take to make this end. I let her talk for about 10 minutes before I responded. I told her that she was right. They had made mistakes. But sending moldy bread to a 7-year-old wasn't a mistake. Writing a note telling a child that his family wishes he was never born wasn't a mistake. Those were deliberate choices made by adults who wanted to hurt an innocent kid because they were angry at his father. I explained that she wanted to know what it felt like to watch your family fall apart. To have everything you'd worked for taken away, to feel helpless and unwanted. Now she knew exactly how Deacon felt when he opened that box. Shirley started sobbing and saying that they never meant for it to be that cruel, that they were just frustrated because they missed their grandson and felt like I was keeping him away from them. She said they thought if they could make me angry enough, I might come back home and we could work things out. I told her that was the stupidest plan I'd ever heard. You don't torture a child to get back at his parent. You don't send a 7-year-old garbage and tell him he's unwanted because you're having a disagreement with his father. There is no justification for that level of cruelty toward an innocent kid. That's when she asked me what it would take to make me stop. What I wanted from them to end this nightmare. I told her that I wasn't stopping until they had nothing left. No house, no business, no income, no savings. They were going to lose everything. Just like they tried to make my son feel like he was nothing. She started screaming at me then, saying I was a monster for destroying so many lives over one stupid birthday package, that I was punishing Michaela's children and Ellis's family for something that Lawson and she had done. I reminded her that Ellis had been stealing money and gambling away his family's future long before I got involved. That Michaela had been cheating on her husband and destroying her own marriage without any help from me. All I did was make sure that the consequences of their actions finally caught up with them. That's when she really lost it. She started shrieking about how I was just like my father, vindictive and cruel and incapable of forgiveness. She said that Uncle Lane would be ashamed of what I'd done to his legacy, that I was destroying a business that had been in our family for generations. I laughed at that. I actually laughed out loud, which seemed to make her even angrier. I told her that Uncle Lane's legacy was already destroyed the moment Lawson inherited it and started using it as collateral for loans he couldn't pay back. That the family business she was so worried about had been doomed for years because of their own financial mismanagement and Ellis's theft. But more importantly, I told her that she wanted to talk about Uncle Lane being ashamed. Uncle Lane loved children. He used to send me and Ellis and Michaela birthday presents every year when we were kids. Real presents, not garbage designed to hurt us. He would be disgusted by what they did to Deacon. Shirley got quiet for a moment and I thought maybe she was finally understanding the severity of what they'd done. But then she started up again with this whole speech about how family forgives family and how I was supposed to be the bigger person. That's when I completely lost my patience. I told her that being the bigger person doesn't mean letting people abuse your child without consequences. That forgiveness has to be earned through genuine remorse and changed behavior, not demanded because you're facing the results of your own actions. I explained that they had multiple opportunities over the years to apologize for their treatment of me and Deacon. They could have sent a real birthday gift. They could have called to talk things through. They could have acknowledged that sending moldy bread to a 7-year-old was cruel and inappropriate. Instead, they doubled down. They defended their actions. They laughed about it when Michaela called me. They made it clear that they felt completely justified in emotionally abusing my son because they were angry at me. So, no, I wasn't going to be the bigger person. I was going to be the person who protected his child and made sure that anyone who tried to hurt him faced real consequences. The conversation ended with Shirley hanging up on me after calling me some very unflattering names, but the damage was already done. 3 days later, I got a call from Michaela. She was practically hysterical. Apparently, the story about their family's financial collapse had spread through their entire social circle. People were talking about Ellis's arrest, Lawson's firing, the foreclosure, her affair, everything. She said their kids were being bullied at school because everyone knew their family was falling apart. That she couldn't go to the grocery store without people staring and whispering, that the whole town was treating them like paras. She begged me to help them figure out a way to rebuild. She said she understood that they'd hurt Deacon and that what they did was wrong, but that destroying their entire lives wasn't going to undo the damage to my son. I told her she was absolutely right. Nothing was going to undo the damage they'd done to Deacon. But at least now they understood what it felt like to be humiliated and rejected by their community. At least now they knew what it was like to have people look at them with disgust and disappointment. Michaela started crying and asking me what kind of person I'd become. She said the brother she remembered would never have been capable of this level of cruelty. I told her that the brother she remembered died the day they sent moldy bread to his 7-year-old son. That the person she was talking to now was someone who had learned that the only way to protect your family from toxic people is to remove them from your life completely. And if that meant destroying their lives in the process, so be it. The foreclosure on my parents' house went through yesterday. Ellis was arrested Tuesday morning and is currently sitting in jail because his wife couldn't make bail after their house was seized. Lawson is unemployed and unemployable since word got around about why he was fired. Michaela is living in a 1-bedroom apartment because Lane got everything in their divorce. And me, I'm back home with Deacon, who just started 2nd grade and has no idea that his family's cruelty cost them everything they'd ever built. All he knows is that his dad loves him and that we make our own happiness. This morning, I got a text message from an unknown number. It said, "We're sorry. Please forgive us. We'll do anything to make this right." I deleted it without responding. You know what the best part is? I'm not done yet. See, when you destroy someone's financial life completely, they become dependent on whatever income sources they can find. Ellis is going to need a job when he gets out of jail. Lawson is going to need employment to avoid bankruptcy. Michaela is going to need work to support herself and pay for her legal fees. Guess who owns several businesses in their area now? Guess who has been building a network of contacts and relationships that could make it very difficult for certain people to find employment anywhere in their hometown? They wanted to teach my son about being unwanted and worthless. They're about to learn what it really means to have nowhere to turn and no one willing to help. Some things can't be forgiven. Some actions have consequences that last forever. They wanted to teach my son about failure. Mission accomplished. They just didn't realize they were going to be the ones learning the lesson. Deacon's birthday is coming up again next month. I'm thinking about sending them a package. Maybe some photos of our new house or brochures from the private school he's starting at in January. Something to remind them what success actually looks like. After all, what goes around comes around. And I've been going around this for 5 very productive years.